At just 11, Talia lost everything: her mother, her home, and her voice in the world. When a wealthy stranger offered her a new life, she thought she had finally been rescued. But what she didn't know was that she hadn't escaped danger. She had walked straight into it. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Talia was only 11, but her world felt full and warm. Her mother, Mara, was all she had ever known. Her father had died when she was a toddler, so Mara played every role: mother, father, teacher, and friend. Life wasn't perfect, but it was filled with laughter, kindness, and quiet love. Every morning, Mara packed Talia's lunch, kissed her forehead, and waved as she walked into school. One Thursday afternoon, the sun was high, and Talia waited at the school gate as usual. Students ran past her, heading home laughing with friends. But Talia stood alone watching the road, her small fingers gripping her backpack straps. Mara was never late, but today, minutes passed like hours. Miles away, Mara was driving through traffic, one hand on the steering wheel, the other holding her phone. The screen lit up with a call from her older sister, Senna. They hadn't spoken in weeks, not since Senna had asked for money. Mara sighed and answered. "Hello, Senna?" Her sister's voice was sharp and rushed. "I need $1,000. It's urgent, I'm not joking this time." Mara blinked and shifted in her seat. "Senna, I don't have it right now. I just paid for new stock this morning. I can send something next week, I promise." Senna's tone turned bitter. "That's what you always say. You think you're better than everyone. You have your own business. People respect you. But remember, life turns. The ones on top today will be beneath tomorrow." Mara felt her chest tighten. "Senna, why are you talking like this? Have I ever turned you away? I helped raise your children. I paid your rent when your husband left. I gave you money to start over." Senna hissed through the phone. "And what does that matter now? I'm asking for help today. If you can't give it, just say so. Stop preaching." Mara's voice cracked with pain. "I will not give money to someone who speaks with such hatred. Not anymore. You're ungrateful, Senna." The line went silent for a second. Then Senna said something that made Mara's heart skip. "You're always talking about tomorrow. But what if you don't live to see it? Death doesn't need permission." Those words hit harder than anything else. They clung to Mara's mind like fog. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. "Senna, why would you say something like that?" she whispered. But the line had already gone dead. Mara blinked, trying to shake the heaviness in her chest. She didn't notice the truck speeding down the opposite lane. One loud horn, one screech of tires, and a sudden crash ended it all in a blink. News of Mara's death spread like wildfire. The town was shocked. She had always been full of life, generous and hardworking. No one understood how such a bright light could be taken so quickly. Many called it a cruel accident. No one knew about the phone call, the bitter words, or the silence that followed. When Talia heard the news, her young heart broke in ways words could not describe. Her mother was her everything. Her arms, her voice, her love. It was all gone. She didn't cry at first. She just stared ahead, as if waiting to wake up from a dream that felt too heavy. The funeral was filled with tears and sad music. People came to pay respects. They brought food, flowers, and stories. Talia stood quietly, her small hand holding a picture of her mother. Behind her, Senna stood tall, wearing black, with a calm face and soft eyes. After the burial, Senna stepped forward, in front of everyone. "I will take care of Talia," she said gently. "She is my sister's child. I will raise her like my own. She will go to school just like my children, I promise." Talia looked up at her aunt, her eyes full of quiet hope. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to trust again. But what she didn't know, what no one could have guessed, was that behind Senna's soft words was a plan wrapped in darkness. Days later, Senna moved into Mara's house. She brought her own children, her bags, and her smile. She said it was best to stay there so Talia could feel safe. But soon, things began to change. Furniture disappeared. Jewelry was sold. Talia's mother's clothes were packed away and never seen again. People who came to visit noticed Senna had taken full control of everything. "It's for Talia's future," she would say sweetly. But when the visitors left, Senna's tone changed. Her smiles faded. "Clean the living room," she snapped at Talia one morning. "My children will be home from school soon." Talia blinked. "But, Auntie, what about my school?" Senna's eyes grew cold. "School? There's no money for that." "Not anymore. You're old enough to help around the house." Talia nodded slowly, still trying to understand. She missed her mother. She missed her old life. But she stayed quiet, hoping things would get better. What she didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The house once smelled like cinnamon and warm bread, filled with laughter and music from the small radio in the kitchen. It used to be a place where Talia felt safe. Every corner held a memory of her mother, her soft voice, her gentle hands, her quiet strength. Now, it was silent, cold, unfamiliar. Senna had taken over everything. Within a week of moving in, she sold Mara's favorite chairs and packed away all her clothes. She said it was too painful to see them. But Talia noticed how Senna's own clothes looked newer, finer, and how her phone had changed to a shiny new one. Senna's 3 children, older than Talia, walked through the house like they owned it. They called Talia names, made her do their laundry, and laughed when she spoke about school. They didn't hide their dislike. Talia became invisible to them, except when they needed something cleaned or fetched. At first, Talia stayed hopeful. She believed that maybe her aunt just needed time to settle. Maybe she was still grieving. But the days turned into weeks, and then months. And nothing got better. Talia woke early each day, before the sun rose, to sweep the compound, wash the dishes, and cook breakfast for everyone. She ate last if anything was left. When the other children got ready for school in their uniforms, Talia watched quietly from the kitchen window. She missed the smell of her old school books, the sound of the bell, the way her teacher used to say her name with a smile. One evening, as Talia washed a large pile of clothes in the backyard, her fingers aching and raw, she finally asked again, "Auntie, please, I want to go to school. I'll work after classes. I just want to learn again." Senna didn't even look up from her phone. "School costs money. I have no money." Talia swallowed her tears and nodded. "But Mama left money, I remember. She had savings, and there were houses and land too." Senna slowly turned her head, her eyes sharp. "Are you calling me a liar?" Talia shook her head quickly. "No, Auntie, I just thought—" "You thought wrong," Senna snapped. "Everything your mother left was used for her burial, and even that wasn't enough." The next day, Talia saw Senna giving envelopes of money to someone at the gate. She didn't ask questions. She just folded towels and returned to scrubbing the floors. That was how her days went. Cleaning, cooking, washing. No books, no lessons, no laughter. Inside, Talia's hope was shrinking. She missed her mother's stories before bedtime, the way they danced to old songs on the porch, the soft kisses on her forehead. Now she slept on a thin mat near the kitchen, while Senna and her children had their own rooms with soft beds and loud televisions. One rainy afternoon, Talia stood outside hanging wet clothes on a line when she slipped and scraped her knee, badly. She limped inside, crying softly, blood running down her leg. Senna barely glanced at her. "What's all that noise for? Go clean it and get back to work." "It hurts, Auntie. Pain is part of life," Senna said coldly. "You better learn that now." Talia bit her lip and limped to the bathroom. She cleaned her wound with soap and an old towel, tears mixing with the rain still on her face. That night she hugged her mother's photo close and whispered, "Mama, I don't know how much more I can take." The next morning, something changed inside her. After finishing her chores, Talia went to the small box under her mat. Inside was her old school uniform, faded, a little tight but clean. She held it close, her fingers brushing the collar gently. Slowly, she dressed. She looked at herself in the cracked mirror in the hallway. She no longer looked like the girl who once loved school, but her eyes still held something, a small burning light. She picked up her school bag, the one she hadn't touched in months, and walked to the front gate. Her plan was simple. She would go to her old school, find her, teach her, and tell the truth. Maybe someone would help her. Maybe she could learn again. As she opened the gate quietly, her heart beating fast, Senna's voice rang out from the porch. "Where do you think you're going?" Talia froze. "Answer me!" Senna shouted, stepping forward. "Are you mad? You think you can just run away?" Without thinking, Talia ran. She ran as fast as she could, her shoes slapping against the wet ground, her breath sharp in her chest. Behind her, she could hear Senna shouting, her footsteps chasing close. The main road came into view. Cars zoomed past in both directions. Talia ran faster, her school bag bouncing against her back. Just as she reached the edge of the road, a car appeared. Too fast, too close. Horns blared. Brakes screamed. Someone shouted. Talia shut her eyes, but the car stopped just in time. A man stepped out. Tall, dressed in a neat suit, his eyes wide with concern. "Young girl, are you all right?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Talia looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "Please," she whispered. "I just want to go to school again." Talia sat on the side of the road, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound of the car's tires still echoed in her ears. She looked up, breathing heavily, and saw the man who had nearly hit her walking toward her. His face was calm, and his voice was gentle. "Are you hurt?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Talia shook her head slowly, though her hands trembled. "I'm fine," she whispered. He looked at her school bag, then at her faded uniform, and then into her tired eyes. He offered a kind smile. "My name is Mr. Guerin," he said. "You were running very fast. Where were you going?" Talia hesitated. She looked behind her. Senna was not in sight, but her voice still echoed in Talia's mind, sharp, angry, full of threats. "I was going to my school," Talia replied softly. "My aunt won't let me go anymore. She makes me do all the house chores, and I just wanted someone to help me." Mr. Guerin's face changed slightly. He seemed surprised, then concerned. "How old are you?" he asked. 11, Talia said. He stood up slowly and offered her his hand. "Come," he said. "Let's talk to your aunt together." Talia looked at his hand for a moment, then stood up on her own. She followed him quietly back to the compound. Her heart beat faster with every step, unsure of what would happen next. They reached the gate, and Mr. Guerin knocked firmly. Senna opened the door with a frown. When she saw Talia, her expression changed to fake concern. "Talia, where have you been? I was so worried," she said, stepping forward. Mr. Guerin raised his hand gently. "Madam," he said calmly, "I nearly hit this girl on the express road. She said she was running away from home. She told me you've refused to send her to school and that she's been made to work like a servant. Is that true?" Senna's eyes shifted quickly. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she let out a small laugh. "Oh no, sir. Children exaggerate," she said sweetly. "She didn't want to do her morning chores and now she's trying to get sympathy. We treat her like family." Talia looked down, her small hands clenched tightly. Mr. Guerin looked between the two of them. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Let me introduce myself properly," he said. "I'm a businessman. I also run a foundation that helps orphans and children in need. I sponsor education and provide support for families that can't cope." Senna raised an eyebrow. "So?" she asked. "I was moved by this girl," Mr. Guerin continued. "I want to help her. I would like to take responsibility for her education and care." Senna stepped back slightly. "What do you mean, you want to take her away?" "If you allow it," Mr. Guerin said. "I could even adopt her if needed. It's clear she needs more than just shelter. She needs love, structure, and a chance to learn." A long pause followed. Then Senna's eyes narrowed. "If you want her, then fine. Take her," she said sharply. "She's been a burden anyway, but don't expect to do it for free." Mr. Guerin was quiet. Senna crossed her arms. "How much are you willing to pay?" Talia's eyes widened. She looked up at her aunt, confused and hurt. Mr. Guerin frowned. How much do you want? He asked. $1,000, Senna said without hesitation. There was silence. The same amount she had once begged from Mara. The same amount that led to that bitter phone call. Mr. Guerin looked at Talia for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and made the transfer. A few minutes later, Senna received a message and smiled. You can take her, she said. She's your problem now. Talia stood frozen. Her body was still, but her heart raced. She looked around at the house her mother had built. She remembered birthdays on the porch, bedtime stories under soft blankets, the sound of her mother's voice calling her in for dinner. Now, she was leaving it behind. Mr. Guerin placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Are you ready? He asked. Talia nodded. They walked out of the gate, away from the house, away from Senna. As they got into Mr. Guerin's car, Talia looked out the window one last time. She felt a mix of sadness and hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something better. The car drove through the town, past the school she used to attend, past the small shop where her mother once bought fresh bread. Mr. Guerin spoke kindly to her, asking about her favorite subjects, what she wanted to be when she grew up. I want to be a teacher, Talia said softly. I want to help children learn. Mr. Guerin smiled. That's a beautiful dream. They reached a large house with tall trees and a quiet garden. Mr. Guerin led her inside and showed her a neat room with books on a shelf and a soft bed by the window. This is your room, he said. Talia looked around, unsure of how to feel. It was clean, quiet, and warm. But something felt strange. Too quiet, too perfect. That night, she lay in bed, unable to sleep. She stared at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow would bring. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel fear, but deep inside her a small voice whispered a warning. Not all smiles are kind and not every rescue is safe. Talia woke up to silence. The room was dim, and the morning light had not yet crept through the curtains. Her body felt heavy, as if something had pressed her into the mattress. When she tried to move, her arms felt weak. Her head spun slowly. Everything seemed wrong. The night before, she remembered eating dinner with Mr. Guerin. He had smiled at her and told her that she was safe now. He said she would go to school, have friends, and live a better life. She wanted to believe him. She had even started to hope. But now in this moment she couldn't move. Something had changed. A strange smell filled the room, not a normal smell like food or flowers, but something bitter and smoky, like burnt herbs and old wood. Talia blinked slowly, her vision blurry. Then the door opened. Mr. Guerin walked in, not with the warm smile he had worn before, but with a blank expression. Behind him were two other girls around Talia's age. Their faces were pale, their eyes dull. They didn't speak. It's time, he said softly. He walked over to Talia and whispered strange words under his breath. Then, he lifted her gently into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Talia tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't come out. She wanted to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. Outside, the air was cold. The car drove through winding roads, far from the town, into a thick forest. Trees stood tall like dark giants, their branches twisting like claws. The sun had not yet risen. The forest felt alive in a strange and haunting way. After a long drive, they reached a hidden path. Mr. Guerin parked the car and carried Talia and the other girls down a narrow trail. They walked for what felt like hours until they arrived at a clearing with a stone altar in the center. Candles burned around it. Strange symbols were drawn on the ground. The air felt heavier here, filled with whispers and shadows. Mr. Guerin placed the girls near the altar. His face now looked tired and desperate. He knelt before the altar and spoke to the empty space in front of him. My time is running out, he whispered. I have brought the final one. Please take them and give me more years. A low wind blew through the trees. The candles flickered. Suddenly, the shadows on the trees seemed to move on their own. Something unseen filled the air, cold and strong. As Mr. Guerin raised his hands to begin the ritual, Talia's fingers twitched. Her eyes opened wide. Somehow the strange sleep had started to fade. Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. Then, something strange happened. A sudden gust of wind blew out all the candles. The forest went dark. A voice, soft but powerful, echoed through the air. It was not loud, but it shook the ground. "You have taken too much," it said. "You were warned." Mr. Guerin fell to the ground, trembling. "Please, I have done everything. I gave you my wife, my youth, my soul. I brought 3 girls as you asked." The voice grew stronger. "Innocence cannot be stolen without a cost, and you have reached the end." Talia sat up fully now. Her limbs still felt weak, but her mind was clear. She looked at the other 2 girls. Their eyes slowly opened too. They were waking up. From the trees, glowing lights began to appear. They floated gently, like fireflies, but with a soft golden glow. They surrounded the altar, lighting the space, with warmth instead of fear. Then the ground near Mr. Guerin cracked. A long shadow rose from it, tall and shapeless. It moved slowly toward him. He screamed and tried to run, but his feet were stuck in place. "Please," he begged. "I did everything you asked." The shadow paused and turned toward the girls. Talia felt her heart stop. But the lights, the golden lights, circled them gently like protectors. The shadow could not touch them. Talia stood up. Her voice returned. "We are not yours," she said, her voice clear and brave. Mr. Guerin fell to his knees, crying. The shadow touched his chest, and in an instant, he collapsed. The shadow vanished into the ground, and silence returned. The golden lights remained. The forest slowly grew brighter. The sun began to rise, its soft light reaching through the branches. The altar crumbled into dust. The path back to the road became clear. Talia helped the other girls to their feet. They walked together, hand in hand, through the forest. Birds began to sing. The fear was gone. When they reached the road, a passing car stopped. The driver was kind. He listened to their story with wide eyes and called the police. Within hours, they were taken to a safe place. Officers searched the forest, but the altar had vanished. Only the broken car and some burnt symbols remained. Talia was placed in a loving foster home. She once did with her mother. Months later, a teacher asked her to share a story for writing class. Talia stood before the class and smiled. "I used to think no one could hear me," she said. "But even in the darkest forest, light can still find its way."